Since its founding in 1829, the Democratic Party has fought against every major civil rights initiative and has a long history of discrimination. The Democratic Party defended slavery, started the Civil War, opposed Reconstruction, founded the Ku Klux Klan, imposed segregation, perpetrated lynchings, and fought against the Civil Rights Acts of the 1950s and 1960s.
Looking at the Black community as a petri dish of what happens when Democrats come in and take control of everything. And what you find when you walk into most predominantly Black communities is that Democrats leave them broken, and bruised. They leave a train of chaos.
Literally every Black person that has walked away from the left or become a conservative, whenever they have something legitimate to say about the Democratic Party, oh, no, don't listen to them. They're just a grifter. They're just being used by the conservatives. They're getting paid. Oh, okay, I guess I won't listen to them. Come on, guys.
The left is only concerned with one thing: control. And they disguise this control as charity. Programs such as welfare, food stamps, these programs aren't designed to lift Black Americans out of poverty. They were always intended as a mechanism for politicians to control the Black community.
It's almost like you got to be controlled. If you don't say what we think Black people should say, then you're shunned. And that's so disappointing, disgusting. And we see it a lot with white liberals. They are the problem, especially when this issue comes up.
Why? Because they don't want independent African Americans to be able to vote independently. They want to keep them on their plantation. And I'm just not a part of that plantation.
And they think that they can basically enslave your minds and keep you on this plantation of just constantly voting for them, supporting them, being on their side, despite the fact that they do nothing for you and despite the fact that they think so little of you.
What's the difference between colored people and people of color? Why is one offensive and the other one isn't? I'll tell you why. Because it's bullshit. It's literally the same words and the order is switched around and there's a one little word difference of in between. It's nonsense. They're the same thing.
I thought we was Team Democrat. We Team Democrat, man. That's what I thought. They give us stuff. They're always fighting for Black stuff. Like when you look on the news, they saying black. The people who say Black most, you think they support Blacks. I don't think that they're saying the word Black so much that they're trying to play the Blacks until you realize that's exactly what's happening.
Well, I can tell you that progressives have always been racist. They have always supported segregation. If we go back to the Democratic Party, it was the party of segregation. And so a few years ago, there was all this discussion about the big switch, how the Democrats and Republicans had switched and that, Democrats were the party of civil rights. And we see that what they have done is to turn the country backwards towards segregation and towards policies that treat racial and ethnic minorities as if they were inferior.
Do you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump and you ain't Black?
To suggest that the people who survived the Middle Passage, survived the horrors of slavery, and then survived Jim Crow, now have reached the point where they can't go down to the DMV to get a free ID to secure their votes. Not only insulting, it's ridiculous. And we've got to push back against that narrative. It's a false narrative meant to continue this propagation that Black folks are victims and that they need the Democratic Party to supply them with for everything that they need.
Because race hustlers, they like the ability to be openly racist, but they don't like when people are openly racist to them. And then they want to cry victim when they get called out on their racism.
Race is being used as a ruse, as a means of deflecting attention away from critical questions such as why are poor Blacks failing in systems run by their own people?
The NAACP's endorsed me every time I've run.
Black people are starting to take a look around in many of their communities and wonder why for the last 50 years things have been the same. Why they're seeing the same old things over and over again and hearing the same things over and over again with no positive results. And they're starting to see that they need to reach out in a different direction. And I think that many of the things they've seen here in North Carolina since 2010, and many of the things, quite frankly, that they saw under a President Trump compared to a President Biden, they're seeing that the answer lies on the other side of the aisle. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more Black voters switch over to Republican.
Whenever someone needs a poster child of brokenness, they go to African Americans, and that's not our story. Our story is a story of victory. Our story is a story of overcoming odds. Our story is, frankly, triumphing after tragic circumstances. That's the story of who we are. And it's a story that should be told, and should be told as a part of the American story, that we as Americans, we are the solution. We shouldn't have fewer Americans. We should have more Americans. You want to increase our labor force participation rate? Choose life.
Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, once said, colored people are like weeds, they need to be exterminated.
Roe v. Wade was passed off of a lie. As of right now, where we are, we're always crying about being an oppressed minority. But we are always going to be an oppressed minority if we continue to abort our offspring. Abortion is the biggest genocide against Black America. They strategically place their abortion clinics in our neighborhoods. And just about every time you hear a Democratic candidate go on stage, the first thing they say is Black women need access to abortion.
Under the veil of secrecy and deception, 60 plus million babies have not been born because they were aborted legally since '73. 1/3 of that population belong to the African American community.
We're not in color purple days where Mr. would just climb on top of us and do his business. This is 2022 and women have the ability to decide yes or no. I want to have sex or I don't. I want to take birth control or I don't. I want to have this baby or I don't. So we need to stop telling these lies as if we just happen to fall on a penis and get pregnant. That's not how it works. We actually have the choice to do that.
Democrats falsely claim that the Republican Party is the villain, when in reality, it's the failed policies of the Democratic Party that have kept blacks down.
Race is being used to deflect attentions away from the failures of people running those institutions.
If you're going to base self-esteem on performance, it cannot be equal, because performance is never going to be equal. And so all you can get in terms of self-esteem is make-believe equality. And of course, what happens in the schools is they grade, in many cases, not on the objective result, but on how you did relative to what the teacher thinks your ability was.
With the affirmative action, they're telling Black people, here's a little bonus so that you can get into school, because we know the little Black kids can't do it on their own. Also, in high school and in middle school, let's lower the grades that you need to have in order to get to the next grade level, in order to graduate. Let's lower that, because we know the Black kids are not as capable.
You may do a wonderful job, and they say, well, you know, he really was he's a very bright kid. He could have done better than that, so he gets a B. And the other student who really did a lousy job, but you know, it was a big struggle for him even to do that, and so he gets the B+. And of course, what that means is that the whole grading system just becomes meaningless and confusing.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
In Prince George's County, where the median income for Black families is $170,000, they're 3 times richer than most whites. If racism were a pervasive problem, then why are not all Blacks suffering equally?
The Democratic Party is actually against you. The Democratic Party is there to hinder you. The Democratic Party is there to keep you in poverty. No matter what they say, no matter how good it looks, it's always a ploy to get you to vote for them. And then the next 2 to 4 years, they are not going to do anything for you.
Democrats is a spirit hundreds of years old. Same character, same smell of slavery and poverty. It's the same meanness, the same hustle. They convince you, very good con artists. And don't believe they hate Black people. They hate people. They will kill their own. They will kill their family members. They will let them die of this fake phony disease running around. They will destroy mankind for a temporary personal gain primarily.
Middle-income Blacks use the demographics and the behavior of low-income Blacks as the bait, and the switch came when the money arrived. And that's why the biggest problem in Black America today isn't between whites and Blacks, it's internal.
The liberal is more deceitful, more hypocritical than the conservative. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. And by winning the friendship and support of the Negro, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon in this political football game. that is constantly raging between the white liberals and the white conservatives.
Poor people are being hustled by these middle-class politicians. As Malcolm X said, they're being bamboozled, scammed, hoodwinked. And one day, that sleeping giant is going to wake up and understand who the real culprit is.
Yeah.
And it is people who look like them who are failing to use their positions to profit the least of God's children. Instead, they're using it to benefit themselves and their own group.
And I'm disappointed in the hypocrisy that the Congressional Black Caucus continues to provide, because they don't have a plan and they would rather continue to crush people because it's all about, again, their power and the liberal elites versus regular America, people who want to stay in power, although they are doing absolutely nothing to make progress on the mission that they continue to talk about.
When evil wears a black face, it will escape detection and therefore correction.
Let's stop calling them liberals. Let's call them Democrats. Let's stop calling them progressive. Let them call themselves that. Let's call them Democrats. So when you say things like the KKK started by Democrats, we say things like every civil rights demonstration and protest was against Democrats. We say things like Democrats own every ghetto in America. And then you compare them to Republicans. But it's a political battle in the spiritual realm. They're evil. So you say Republicans founded, of course, I have to ask my experts, but every black university I ever studied has been founded by Republicans.
There's nothing to lose by giving the Republican Party a second look.
The Republican Party was founded by black people. And so I know the history. And so I stand with the history. I stand with the knowledge of that party. And just like anything else, it's gotten off track. And we have abandoned that party.
The Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an anti-slavery party. Its mission was to stop the spread of slavery into the new Western territories with the aim of abolishing it entirely.
Democrats, on the other hand, were the party of Jim Crow. It was Democrats who defended the rights of slave owners. It was the Republican President Dwight Eisenhower who championed the Civil Rights Act of 1957. But it was the Democrats in the Senate who filibustered the bill.
The Democratic Party was literally founded upon the bedrock of racism, founded upon the bedrock of hate. They were literally the party of white supremacy. They are the party of the KKK, the party of segregation, the party that literally fought to put my great-grandmother to the back of the bus. They did that. That is fact. That is truth. Read a history book and you will know and you will read all about it. Democrats have done more to put black people down than they have ever done to lift us up. They did it by design through welfare. They do it today. And if you look at the cities of Chicago, Flint, Michigan, and so many more, you look at the conditions of black people in Democrat-ran cities and you see black people living in poverty.
I think black Americans are getting a little bit tired of delivering huge votes for the Democrats and seeing minimal return in terms of economic wealth, closing the wealth gap, job creation, job opportunities. And Joe Biden was not an inspiring candidate for many black Americans.
My grandfather was picking cotton. He lived long enough to watch his grandson pick a seat in Congress. That tells me that the story continues. The journey becomes more and more beautiful, more and more amazing. But when you think about the fact that the words that people speak are disconnected from the reality, you hear that inflation is good for people living in poverty. Nothing is further from the truth.
How are black families in the future going to actually increase their net worth if being able to apply for loans is more expensive? How do black families actually increase their wages if our economy is saddled with more inflation? It does not help black people going forward. It actually hurts them.
In Forsyth County, Tucker, in 1914, the Klan drove 1,000 blacks out. In Washington, D.C., 20,000 blacks in the last 20 years have been driven out by gentrification.
Today, D.C. Council voted 12-1 in favor of a bill that would let non-citizens vote in D.C. elections.
Again, I say sanctuary cities are racist. All the jobs are going to illegals and to certain denominations. That is wrong. You're not going to be allowed to get away with it. Your time is going to be up. You want us to feel for your families, but you don't feel for our families. Again, the black community has literally been destroyed by racist, illegal immigration, and we're not going to have it. When my people do a crime, we get 3 strikes. Your people do a crime, they get amnesty, they get benefits, and they're not paying taxes.
You don't see these leaders addressing issues, economic issues like that, is because they can dodge, they can avoid confronting those issues because they use race as a shield.
Yes,
racism,
I've noticed.
white people could all go to Europe tomorrow and the conditions of the inner city would not change.
They are bad for your vote.
Hello, this is Shamik Michelle, and you're watching me on Bob Smoke TV.